Hello programmers! I have a C program here that is a while loop that will print the numbers 1 to 5. So we start out with a variable that's an integer, that's a number that doesn't have a decimal point in it, so something like 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have something like pi, like 3.14, you're going to need a float or a data type that will allow you to have a decimal point. But anyway, we start with x being 1, and a while loop has a condition that evaluates to true or false. In this case, I'm checking whether or not x is less than or equal to 5. And because 1 starts out as x less than or equal to 5, our variable x is going to be true to start with. So we'll go into the loop at least once, and the print statement, we talked about how with this format specifier, this %d will get replaced with whatever is in this variable x, which the first time through the loop, it's just going to be 1. And the \n is a new line character. That's like hitting enter on your keyboard and going to the next line. So that's why our output shows one number per line. Then we're adding 1 to x, so our new x is going to be 2. We go back up to the top of the while loop and we check, is this condition still true? And this will go through the loop until the point in time where x is no longer less than or equal to 5. So it goes through five different print statements. That's a while loop. Now I'm going to show you another loop called a for loop. A for loop is very similar to the while loop, only we're going to do for. And the for loop has 3 parts to it. It has what is usually used to initialize the variable. So I'm going to say, even though I already set it up here, usually your first part of the for loop has your starting point for the variable, whatever is the loop counter. So you initialize your variable, and then here is where you would evaluate an expression to see if it's true or false. So here's where we could do the x less than or equal to 5. And then the final part of a for statement is where you would alter the variable. So this statement right here, where I'm taking x and adding 1 to it, that would usually be what you would do. Another way to say that would be x plus plus. You want to add 1 to x each time through the loop. Alright, so I like for loops because it's more condensed than the while loop. We've got one less line of code because we're doing our initialization here and our increment here. And we'll go ahead and run it, and we do see that we get the same output. I'm using a cool little program, onlinegdb.com, a website that allows you to try out the code, and it's doing the compile step for me and showing me the output. Alright, so for loops and while loops, those are both very good choices for loops. They do pre-test. So we have our conditions up here at the beginning before you actually go into the loop. There's one more type of loop that we can use, and that's a do-while loop. And with a do-while loop, it is a post-test loop. So our condition of should we go through the loop or not, that happens at the end, so you go through at least once. So at the end, I'm going to check, is x still less than or equal to 5? If it is, I'm going to go ahead and keep going through this loop. Otherwise we'll jump out of that loop. So what do we need to do each time through the loop? We're back to, this is kind of like the while loop, where we'll have to make sure to increment our loop counter each time through the loop. And we'll need to make sure to initialize our loop variable. So I'm initializing x to 1 at the beginning, and I'm going to go through the loop and print out each of those values 1 through 5, and at the point in time where this condition is false, we'll exit out of the loop. So that was just 3 different ways to do the same thing of printing 1 through 5 using 3 different types of loops.